Hello and welcome everyone to the Movement Made Better podcast. Today we don't have any guests. It's just Neal and I just shooting the shit today, bro. So it should be a good time, huh?
Oh yeah.
Well, we got another weekend to the NFL season and another slew of injuries there. So we got a ton of running backs out this year.
Now, who's out so far?
Well, let's see. We got Nick Chubb was out already, but what's his name went down? Kareem Hunt went down with an ankle injury. It's been interesting watching the injuries over the last, 5-6 years, really focusing a lot more attention on the rate of injuries and the type of injuries. I think what's interesting is now that we're starting to see a trend into more focus on mobility, shouldn't we be seeing a decrease in injuries?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because you also have to look at their training volume off season, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think nowadays guys train a lot more,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not giving their body that proper recovery they need over the off season. Kind of like we talked about how the old school football players, they didn't train so much in the off season.
No, very true. But I think another big issue is the size of the athletes today, the mass and the amount of just what they carry on their frames is at an all-time high. We just didn't see this 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
The mass differential was exponentially different. And we're talking offensive linemen. You didn't see offensive linemen hit the 300-pound mark until the mid-1980s. Before that, if you had a 270, 280-pound offensive lineman, that was a big dude.
Yeah.
So now you can't even think about playing offensive line weighing 290.
No, you get crushed, man. Plus, so look at that, right? We've got bigger guys that are faster than ever before, right? Speed-wise, they have to be. The 40 times have to have gone down over the years. Maybe not the fastest time, but the overall times among these giants.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're seeing some really big guys running at some really good speeds. I mean, we're talking defensive linemen, we're talking 290, 300-pound guys running sub 540s.
So sports science is working as far as getting guys to perform at the highest level, maximize what they have out of their bodies. Mm-hmm. But maybe with that, we haven't really taken into account, like, do we need even more time off? Do we need more recovery days? Or, it's a hard thing, right? Because these guys, they push themselves that hard because it's going to make them that much better on the field. Everyone else is doing it. So you can't be, a half second slower.
Mm-hmm. Then I think we have to ask ourselves, is this something that is unavoidable? The speed differentials, yes, the athletes are slightly faster today. We've seen the testing between the speeds between Jesse Owens 80 years ago and athletes today. The speed differential isn't that much.
No,
right?
But the size
and speed combination is vastly different. So are we even running into the possibility that, this is ultimately always going to be the case? These injuries, with the amount of mass that these athletes are carrying today and the speeds that they're running at, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
It's not avoidable.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. I mean, when you gained a lot of muscle in the past, did you feel like you got beat up more?
I don't know.
Everyone's frame is different, right?
Everyone's frame is different. I think what's interesting for me personally, I think one of the advantages of being short is the injuries, the type of hits that I've taken, especially in hockey, I haven't had issues other than head trauma.
Yeah.
But impact injuries, no. I mean, most of my injuries, honestly, are from soccer, rolling my ankles, way back in high school and stuff, stupid shit in the gym, dropping stuff on me and stuff like that. Maybe like dropping the 90-pound weight on my foot, that type of thing. But as far as actual like playing as an athlete, no, I haven't had that issue.
Well, I would think the muscle would protect you more from contact, right? But are we having more connective tissue injuries because of the extra size?
Yeah, I mean, it could be because we haven't had the focus until recently. And I don't think most coaches, we're still in the very small minority of coaches actually taking into account, connective tissue in regards to overall training protocols. And then again, I think at the team level, at the professional level, I think that's focused more there than it is with the other trainers that these athletes go to see in the off season.
Yeah.
So they're with the teams and the organizations, they're working with some ridiculously smart individuals, right? A lot of science-based. You've got any organization's got 15 to 25 different people that are focused on the performance and maintenance of these athletes.
Yep.
But then during the off season, then they go see whoever they're used to going to training with. Well, that person may not have the educational background. They may not have the same ideologies, and they may not have the same availability to technology. And that lack of communication between the organization and these coaches, these trainers that these athletes are going to see in the off season can create a big issue.
Yeah, and we've talked to coaches where it's completely different working with someone in the off season as opposed to in season with a team. Like you can be this phenomenal trainer, coach, in this individual setting, but some of that stuff may not really work in that team setting.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I mean, the dynamics can be vastly different. Yeah, I think it's a question that is always going to be out there, but we're seeing greater and greater injury rates. I mean, I think ACLs have been down this year. We haven't seen as many of those, especially the non-contact. I think those are down this year. And I think that's the first time in quite a while. What's interesting is hamstring pulls. We've listened to people like Keith Barr and some other sprinting specialists who have talked about you're going to have, when you push these athletes to these levels, you're trying to find that point at which they're going to break.
Yeah.
Because we're asking our athletes to push the limits farther than any time in our history. So create more velocity, create more explosiveness. Here's another thing, too, to take into account. The NFL added another game this year.
Oh, right? Yeah, man. That's bad news.
I mean, on the body, it takes a massive toll, right? So, they added that 17th game. They took away the preseason game. And a lot of coaches didn't have any of their starters play at all in the preseason. So is that detrimental to their in-season stamina, so to speak?
Kind of because the preseason is basically a ramp up, right? I mean, they're not going all out. Well, the guys that are trying to make the team are going all out, but your starters, maybe they won't be, and they're using it more as, hey, this is getting us up to speed. This is more of conditioning, so that when we get into the regular season, we can go. Your body feels ready, more conditioned. I know in basketball, that's how it is.
But when you're talking about this much impact and this much force being applied on you, it's to sit out the preseason, to hold your starters out. Is it really the smartest decision that you could be making? Is it being too overcautious?
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on their age too, right?
Well, yeah, the older guys definitely aren't going to want to get into that. I mean, I think they probably appreciate not having to do that.
Yeah, because they're all about preservation now at this point in their careers.
Right. But at the same time, you always hear, well, I've been training, but it's not football conditioning. It's not game conditioning. It's not taking the hits. It's not getting mentally ready to be able to take those hits and get into those collisions.
Yeah.
And so your body, during practice, you can only imitate so much of that. The intensity in practice doesn't match the intensity of the game.
Yeah, because you don't want to mess up your teammates too.
Right?
Yeah.
That does happen. I mean, we do see it. But I ultimately think, practice intensity doesn't match the game intensity.
Well, because you got the bright lights, you got the crowd, you've got the adrenaline going. You
got an opponent.
You just step it up another level.
But you got an opponent.
Yeah.
You don't have a teammate. In practice, it's your teammate. And so, you're working hard, but it's still your teammate. So in the back of your head, you're going, okay, I don't want to destroy this guy, right? Yeah. I need this guy on the field with me. Where now it's your opponent. It's a completely different mindset, right? This is a guy that I have bad intentions for, right? This is a person that I'm going to hit with a lot more velocity. I'm going to try to generate way more explosiveness when I drive through this guy as opposed to when I'm in practice against one of my teammates.
Yeah, especially quarterbacks, right? They know they're not going to get hit in practice, so they're not scrambling all out.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's one of those things like with, we had Coach Jesse on, and he was for talking about the hamstrings. And I think hamstrings are one of the most common injuries that we typically see in these athletes. But I think does a lot of this stem from the other types of training that these athletes are doing, as far as, since are we seeing more anterior pelvic tilt? Is it putting more strain on the hamstring when they're just walking around or they're just standing there, right? Is that pelvic position ultimately over fatiguing that connective tissue?
Yeah, it could just be our lifestyle now, right? We're athlete or not, where everyone's sitting way more on their phones, way more in this position all the time. So, that's going to have an effect too.
Yeah, very true. I know one of the things that we wanted to get into in this podcast was talking about some of the guests that we had on over the last, what have we been doing this, about a year now? Calendar year?
Let me look, man.
Oh, shit, I think it's been over a calendar year.
Take a look. No, it's been longer than that now.
Has it been longer than that?
Let's see. When was our first episode?
One of the things I forgot to ask when we had Paul Edmondson on, one of the things I forgot to ask him was about mass and its effect on mobility. Because we had him on talking about hypertrophy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And does mass really limit how mobile you can be?
November 7th, 2019.
Oh, shit.
That was the very first.
Oh, damn. 2019?
Yeah, almost 2 years, man. I mean, we only did 2 podcasts that year.
Yeah.
Maybe 3.
Technically 2020.
Yeah, 2020, I'd say, is our first kind of official one. Yeah, I mean, I think it does, for sure.
Well, I know for me, for especially my upper body, my shoulders, I think the more bulk, the more mass you get the more volume you get in the shoulder area, that's going to definitely hinder or limit your ranges of motion.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to reach, scratch your mid back, your biceps going to get in the way. It's just, no matter how good that shoulder joint is, the tissues are just going to get in the way. Whereas with the hips, your legs are further apart. You can probably maintain most of your hip mobility. Maybe when you're sprinting, it might look a little different because your quads and adductors or glutes are so big. But as far as being able to do the splits, I've seen some pretty massive guys do front splits, side splits, all that stuff.
Yeah, we look at John Call, Juju Motion.
Yeah.
He just hit the stage at the Olympia. What did he do? The amateurs. So he did place really well there. But yeah, he's famous for his splits.
Yeah.
And still carrying the mass that he carries.
But when it comes to your torso, I mean, I think, especially when you're loading a ton of weight, whether it's bench press, deadlift, squats, it definitely affects your, thoracic rotation. It affects your side bending. It's just part of the deal, right? You've got to load all those tissues to grow.
It's a really detrimental aspect that contributes to lack of shoulder mobility. I mean, I've felt it personally myself. So it's something that I chronically have to work on all the time because of that.
Yeah.
But it's the price that I had to pay for something that at a younger age I wanted. So it is what it is, right? I mean, ultimately, long term, if I had looked at the bigger picture and really had more education underneath my belt, at 1920, then yeah, I may have changed my mindset a lot.
What do you mean as far as not doing the bodybuilding stuff?
Yeah, I would have been like, I don't need it then. Especially now, I value the quality of movement over how much I lift.
Yeah.
Or how much I'm moving weight wise. But yeah, at 1920, we don't think about that stuff.
No, because you're still, you're springy. If you get injured, you bounce back right away.
Connective tissue is
not a big deal.
Healthier. The quality is there. Your elasticity is still there. The elastic quality goes down as we get older. So that's something that we always have to deal with too. But yeah, I think I would have totally changed my training regimen. I don't think I would have been looking to bench press certain amounts. I would have been looking to do bent over rows with certain amounts of weight. I would have been like, okay, I'm strong enough.
Yeah.
There would have been weights that I would have hit, or limits I would have hit, and I would have been like, okay, I'm strong enough.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Well, I know my goal is just to remain athletic, and then, as my athleticism starts to go down, just try to keep it going as long as possible. So that's the way that I try to train right now is make sure I'm strong enough to do what I need to do, but, make sure I can run make sure I can throw, make sure I can jump, make sure I can still climb. These are things that I want to do later in life, especially as the kids get older.
Yeah, because you want to be able to play with your kids.
Yeah, and I want to beat them as long as I can.
Yeah, you want to be able to say, yeah, right? You're playing pickup basketball against your son. You want to be able to dominate your son for as long as you can.
As long as I can. Right? But if I'd still dominate him when he's like 13 or 14, then I'm going to question his athleticism.
Oh, yeah.
Then it's like, all right, dude, you don't have a chance.
Even at 13, 14, you wouldn't give them to at least 15, 16?
I don't know, man. Once they're 13, 14, 15 years old, they should be able to beat you at most things. Maybe not strength related or strategy related,
but right? Speed and movement.
But anything with, So maybe 15.
But 15.
So,
yeah, if he's not beating you by then.
But by the time he's 15, I'm going to be, let's see, like 52, 53.
You should still be able. You should still be pretty fluid and moving pretty well.
Be able to move pretty well, but speed wise, I don't think. Well, maybe I'll try.
Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? I think it's one of those things that it'll be fun to see and find out. But I think
watch me pull my hamstrings.
You could, because you're giving that little bit of extra effort.
Exactly.
Because there's that motivation to not let your son beat you at pickup basketball or whatever it is that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Right? Are there any sports that you're going to try to avoid with your kids?
I don't know. Early on, man, I really want them to just try everything. And it doesn't really have to be sports, just activities in general.
Activities in general?
In general, yeah. Just all around, I guess, movement vocabulary that we've talked about. And then let them figure it out themselves. And then see what they naturally gravitate towards. And then, kind of support them. I'm not really going to push them.
Yeah.
Maybe give them little hints like, hey, you're pretty good at this.
Yeah.
Maybe you should do this more. But when I grew up, my parents let me do everything. I wasn't pushed into one thing, and I naturally gravitated towards more individual sports or things with rotation. So, like, I started playing baseball, hockey, and then I got into golf. But at the same time, I was always either skateboarding or mountain biking or, so a lot of the individual things there, martial arts. I never played football, besides like
Sandlot.
Sandlot. I never played any organized football.
Some would say Sandlot is a lot better than padded football.
Yeah, I think early on. I mean, I don't think it's a big deal. Maybe you miss out on some of the strategy components early on.
But Sandlot is a lot more free flowing
as far as moving. Learning movement.
And it's always interesting. Like Sandlot, I just very rarely saw the type of injuries that you see on the fields. That you see in organized. Like it just didn't happen at that rate.
Yeah.
I think because there is no pads. And there's always been a question on, does the padding create a lot of the issue? I know we've asked that in hockey for a long time, especially with head trauma, because the padding is becoming so hard. I mean, it is rock hard today versus the 1960s, 1970s.
Well, when you were playing tackle football growing up, did you ever leave your feet to tackle someone? Launch.
I would every once in a while if the submarine tackle. I did do that a couple times, just even in Sandlot, just because honestly I saw it on TV.
Yeah,
that was really. I saw a couple of college guys and some pro guys doing it. And I was like, let me see if this works.
But you weren't launching your head at them. You're kind of wrap them.
No, I went in full submarine. Yeah, my buddy Gerald Marone. I remember. It was one of my best tackles. He was grunting. He was trying to do his sweep. I came off the edge, and he had long legs. Gerald was much taller than me. Everybody's taller than me. But yeah, most of the time, no, it was solid wrap tackle.
Yeah.
Because you're like, especially for a guy my size, am I really going to take down that person that I'm trying to tackle? For me, it was more just hold on and become a dead weight.
Slow down, let your buddies come and tackle.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I was always a pretty solid tackle, and I could drive through people, but still, I weighed $120, $130.
Yeah.
So it was more of just wrap around, hold. If I don't take the guy down, at least hold on until my teammates get there and help. And we're not seeing that today in today's organized today's organized football. We're seeing a really piss poor form of tackling, to be honest with you. So technique has kind of gone out the window. It's like that kid that just set the record for tackles in a game with 33.
Oh, that was that
tackles.
What was his name?
FBS. He's in the FCS ranks. But when you look at his tackling, it is all just boom, wrap, take down, and if you at least can't take that guy down, he's a 230-pound anchor.
Yeah.
So he's at least holding on until his teammates get there. But everybody wants that highlight ESPN
I was just going to say, what do you think that's about, man?
It is. I started seeing that in the early 90s. You know, it was the sports centification of everything. It was, I want to be on the highlights. I want to be on the top 10 highlights. And so that led to, in my mind, it led to a lot of different aspects that took away from the basics of whatever sport it was you were playing. You know, even today, here's another one. Today, guys running footballs, you know, picking off passes and running into the end zone and then dropping the ball before they even get into the end zone. How many times a year do we see that? It's happened, I think, 3 times already this season.
In the NFL?
Oh, in college and the NFL.
Wow.
Either running, it happens more on the defensive side of the ball, but they get an interception or fumble, they're running it back in, and then they literally drop the ball before they get across the goal line. I'm like, how stupid is that, right? I mean, that's ridiculous. But we've created that culture. We've created that desire to be on TV, to get that Sports Center highlight or that highlight show highlight versus just doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That one segment that they have, you only have one job. Yeah, you only have one job. Get in the end zone and then drop the ball. Like, it's not that hard, right?
Yeah. I think the celebrating's fine as long as you cross the line.
Yeah, like
just get over to the end zone and then celebrate. I think the taunting rule or being penalized for taunting, like in the NBA.
Yeah, that one's gonna get that. That's gonna get.
Do they do that in the NFL too?
Yeah, they just started the crackdown.
That's kind of silly, man.
Yeah, that's one of those things.
I mean, when you're playing a pickup game of anything with your buddies, you know, you do something over them, you taunt them a little bit.
Oh yeah, it's the benefit.
Yeah,
it's the benefit, right? You got the better of them, so you talk shit.
Yeah, I mean, part of sports is mind games too.
Oh, totally.
So
Muhammad Ali was one of the best of all time at playing mind games, right? Even Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger was notorious for playing mind games with his competitors.
Yeah.
Before they hit on stage, right? He was always known for making little comments like, "Oh, your back's looking a little small," things like that, right? Or, you know, Arnie was famous for telling competitors, "Oh, you're holding a little water there," you know, things like that. Just even if they weren't, just to get them thinking, "Holy shit, am I holding more water than I should right now?
Yeah.
Do I look a little, you know, smooth?" You know, so Arnie would always just screw with his competitors.
Well, I remember growing up, so I was 17, I was playing in this amateur golf tournament, and I got paired up with this guy who was top players in this little amateur circuit, the NCGA. And I think we're on 16 or 17 at San Jose Country Club. So he tees off first, and it's a pretty narrow hole. You got out of bounds left, out of bounds right, and then if you go too far, there's a hazard. So he hits his tee shot right down the middle, and he turns around and he's like, "Ooh, I'm glad I didn't hit that out of bounds." I'm like, oh, what an asshole. And then, you know, I'm like, oh, that's how it is out here. Okay, I get it. Yeah, hey, you make these subtle comments, you know.
Oh yeah.
And you just put it in that person's head.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be, you know, you step over that shot, you go through your routine, and now all of a sudden, at least back then when I was 17, I'm like, oh, there's out of bounds left. Oh, there is out of bounds right. You're not, you know, you stop thinking about, hey, just pick your target and go.
Right.
That's how you should be thinking.
Yeah. But then he put that in your head.
He puts that in your head, and you know, I was inexperienced at that point.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I get it.
No, totally. That's very true. Very true. My perspective being in this industry versus just being a fan and looking at in sports and in performance, seeing those two windows. Because it's always interesting in regards to listening to fans talk about injuries versus people that are actually in it. Right?
Yeah.
Well, these teams are paying a lot of money to a lot of really smart people to try to prevent these injuries from taking place. But they're still
they still happen.
They're still going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, shit happens. Anytime where two humans are colliding together, yeah, that's bound to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I think the question is the non-contact injuries, right? You know, it was interesting. Baker Mayfield's injury yesterday on his left shoulder, right? So he separated the shoulder again, but he hit the ground when he did it, and his arm was out in an extended position. So it was a non-contact injury in the fact that he wasn't hitting the shoulder area by a player, but it is contact. He made it with the ground.
Yeah, it's still gravity.
Right? It's still gravity. And it was still impact with the ground. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects it because it's his non-throwing shoulder, right?
Did he stay in the game?
No, they took him out. He was in a sling after the game, but they only have 4-day turnaround.
Oh, okay.
Remember, they play this Thursday.
Oh.
And there's another thing, too, in regards to athletes and recovery, right? How much do the leagues really care about the athlete's safety? Because a lot of football players have debated if the league really gave a shit about us, they wouldn't have a Thursday game because they would give us more time to recover. Because think about it, if you play Sunday, you got a quick turnaround onto a Thursday game.
Well, you're still beat up.
You're still beat up. Oh my God, you're still feeling on Wednesday, you're still feeling Sunday's game, and now you got to go back in tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? During that 4-day process, what are you really focusing on? Are you focusing on training, or are you actually just focusing on recovery?
You got to be in that room, but for sure they should be focusing on just getting moving again in that short span.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, that's
probably watching a ton of film.
Yeah, strategizing, watching a ton of film, but the actual training itself, going in and doing a session on Tuesday and Wednesday, or even Monday, like what does that training protocol look like? Are you having people squat and do cleans and snatches on a Tuesday after they just played on a Monday, on a Sunday, I should say?
We need to get Chip on here.
We got to get Chip on here and talk to him about that. That's the thing. It's been interesting to see because their schedules are so hectic. And that's one thing that the average person just doesn't get a context of is how busy these people's schedules really are at these levels.
Yeah, I think the average person, then even, the trainer that isn't associated or doesn't know anyone that's in team sports and doesn't realize what these guys go through and, talking about how they can prevent this, they can prevent that. You're like, I don't know, man. You don't really know what's going on in there. So that's kind of a bold statement.
I mean, we see people that are chronically injured all the time. Is it something that's genetically just who they are? And regardless of what you do for them, is that just who they are, right? Do they have a more elastic tissue quality than the stiffness that they're kind of looking for, especially in contact sports, right? And so if you don't have that tissue quality that you need and it's not resilient enough, are you ultimately going to be chronically injured? Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah, if you're playing that kind of power explosive sport, yeah, you're just going to be...
Well, it's, some people... Greg Oden barely played in the NBA, right? But here's a guy that was his body older than it actually was? Was he actually well beyond his actual chronological years? We know we can do testing on people, right? Anybody off the street can go get tested from a physiological standpoint and be told, okay, you're 25 years of age, but your body is an 18-year-old body. Okay, according to the set parameters of that testing protocol, right?
Yeah,
or what they're taking into account. But then there are other people that go in and get tested and they're 30 years old and the test come back and it says, okay, you're 30 years old, but your body's a 40-year-old body. So is that the case there? Are we seeing some of that take place?
Yeah, I wonder if they're starting to do those tendon tests, the specific type of tendon that you have. I wonder if they're starting to do that in pro sports now.
Right. Because I think that would go a long way, even in just general population, and go a long way to tell us how our body's going to respond and what types of training then would be the best for you. Because we don't know what type of training is the best for us. Nobody knows that when they go in, right? When you and I started going into a gym, did you know what type of sport or training was best for you?
Oh, no.
Yeah, no.
Oh.
I mean, if we had connective tissue testing, and then they said, okay, your connective tissue quality genetically is here, right?
Yeah, it adapts to this the best.
Right.
Then you're probably going to gear your training more to that and go, hey, I'll throw in these little explosive bouts here and there, but this can't be the majority because I'll have a ton of breakdown.
Right. And other people will be the opposite. Yeah. They'll be able to, they're genetically just predispositioned to be able to take more higher intensity levels, to be able to take more volume and abuse, so to speak, versus being on a more gentle approach, so to speak, right? So those are things, some types of things that we kind of would only benefit everybody out there if we had that ability to do that testing.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be cool, man, to have that accessible.
Because then you would know, okay, Olympic lifting, not my thing, or swimming would be better for me than doing, gymnastics or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, we look at people that do parkour, right? And they're phenomenal athletes. And the amount of jumping that they can do and the levels at what they jump from. I mean, we see guys on Instagram, social media, jumping from 30 feet off the ground and landing perfectly fine. Now, they do have some missteps. They're not 100% bulletproof, right? They do have miscalculations in there. But the majority of the time, they're doing pretty well.
See, and you would think basically, so those top parkour guys, right? Everyone started out when they're kids or teenagers. And as you get better and better and better, the guys that get weeded out and then get all the way to the top, those guys probably have the right genetic qualities to be that good. Like if you don't have those genetic qualities, you're not going to get that good because your body won't be able to handle all that impact and, that have that springiness when they land so that they can absorb and then redirect it in a certain direction. Whereas if you have really, really lax joints and you land from 25, 30 feet, but you probably, if you started parkour as a kid, you probably found that out really quick. Like, shit, I can't do it like that guy.
Right.
I mean, I think sometimes with these activities, you kind of know too right away, right? As far as sports goes, maybe not your types of training, but when you're a kid, hey, I'm better at doing this than I am at doing that. Like, I'm not really a good jumper, but I could throw really hard.
But we still see people that get into a style of training.
Yeah.
And they have chronic injuries, but they just still keep at it.
Yeah.
So do we then have to separate the mindset from the actual physical properties?
Yeah, and some of that is probably a social thing too.
So it's because somebody does something because either with a bunch of people, there's that community feel. They may do something because they just truly enjoy it. It makes them happy versus, yes, physically they get hurt, but when they're doing it, they're having an absolute blast doing it. So, it's one of those things of, okay, do we take this away from this person and say, hey, you just gotta stop doing this?
Yeah.
Or do we try to make the person as resilient as possible so they can continue to do it?
Yeah, that's where they have to figure out a way to scale themselves up progressively and not make these big jumps. Because let's just say someone that doesn't have great genetic qualities to do CrossFit, but just loves it. They start off, they'll probably feel great, right? Getting moving, it's high intensity. Weights are going to be relatively light when you start out. So there's not too much damage. But then as you get stronger and stronger and stronger, more skilled, then you're handling more loads. That's when the injuries start to happen. But they enjoy it so much, you're like, what do we do? Let's just, make sure things work as well as they can work, and try to get them to maybe change their programming a little bit, in a certain way. And that's kind of the best we can do. But we can't tell someone that, hey, you should just stop. You can tell them that, but I don't know if that's the best thing for them mentally too, right?
Yeah, because the last thing we want is that person to go into more of a funk emotionally and mentally. We don't want that person there. So we don't want that person to be all just discouraged that they can't do something. Maybe try to direct them towards a different alternative and see if they somehow gravitate to a different modality.
Yeah, that's true. Something gives them that same feeling, but maybe it's stretched out over a longer period of time. It could be intense, but maybe more intervals, like bouldering is like that, right? It's really intense for maybe a minute. Maybe you're on the wall for 90 seconds. Yeah. That's pretty long to be on a boulder. But then you're resting. You're literally sitting there for like 8 to 10 minutes or something.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's one of those things where we look at from the mindset of trying to get people to understand the complexity of the human body without trying to make it too complicated, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because people generally want simple. We know that from an education standpoint, we don't want to get too technical, especially when we're talking to our clients.
Yeah.
Right? You can throw all the technical terminology out there. You're going to lose them probably within the first 30 seconds that you're talking to them. So you've got to really bring it down to layman's terms. So in the same respect, I think our job as coaches is to understand the intricacies of the human body and then try to direct it, try to get all that funneled somehow into a very simple approach for our clients.
Yeah, and the other thing, we need to get them to understand is they truly need to listen to their body because they know what's best for them. They know better than we do. Mm-hmm. They know how it actually feels. Like we're giving them our suggestions as coaches, right? And sometimes these suggestions, they're guesses based on whatever data we have about them and their training history or their medical history. But ultimately, that decision for them to do something comes down to them. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, and we've done it in the past, you felt something, you're like, whatever. I'll just keep going.
Oh, yeah. Guilty.
So that's not you. You're truly not listening to your body. Your body's telling you, they give you the right signals. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if everyone really did that, I think people would hit the brakes more often.
And I think what the problem is that mindset of don't quit.
Yeah.
Keep pushing, right? That mindset is there to push through it. It's okay. Don't quit. And progress has to be made. But sometimes progress is not doing something.
Yeah.
And that's not a mindset that most people have.
And then it's different if you're fighting or something like that, right? You need to give it everything you have, whatever you have. There can't be this, I'm going to back off because you get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
Or if you're in war or something like that, that's completely different, right? But when you're just, say you have a desk job, and you want to be healthier, you want to be stronger, you don't have to push it to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because even from a bodybuilding standpoint, it doesn't require you to lift a lot of heavy weights.
No.
It's just volume. Just keep adding the volume. Give the stimulus to the tissues for it to grow. But there in that respect, it's limited ranges of motion, a lot of just sagittal plane, but a high amounts of volume, which we know is ultimately detrimental to, can be detrimental to that individual, especially from a movement quality standpoint.
Yeah.
We see people that just get stuck into those certain patterns and that's all they know. So we see that they have limited ranges of motion and they're very uncoordinated and they don't have that body awareness when other movements are required.
Yeah. And if ultimately you just want to build muscle and that's your thing, then that's totally cool. But yeah, we got to make sure that we keep some movement quality just for our daily life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the long-term mindset is something we kind of want to get people to think about a little bit more. You talked about just body awareness, listening to the signals that your body's giving you as far as saying, okay, this isn't really working out. Maybe I should change something. And then also thinking, okay, if I do this now, what will be the trickle-down effect 10, 15, 20 years down the road, which is still always hard to gauge.
Yeah.
But we can at least make some assumptions.
Yeah, because there's always a cost.
There's always
a cost with training.
Always. Right? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
The closer you get to maximum, the higher the cost.
Oh, big time. And so it's for the average person, you don't really ever need to get to maximum because very few times in life are you ever going to be asked to give maximal output outside of a gym.
Yeah.
That's one of those things so it's kind of saying, you've heard us talk in other podcasts before of how much strength do we really need? How strong do we really have to be? The average person. Can the average person on the street deadlift 225? No.
Yeah.
The average person that you come across, not even close, right? Can the average person that you see on the street squat 225? No.
Yeah.
The people that you see at the gym, yes, the percentage of people that can do that, much higher. But when you take that and spread it out over the rest of the demographic, think about how many people actually go to the gym and work out on a regular basis out of the overall population.
I don't know. You have to look at it. It's got to be a small
percentage. Yeah. I mean, it's really a small percentage. So I think we have that mindset of, oh, we're always in the gym, so you see all these people. So people are much stronger than we think. But no, you're only seeing a very small fraction of the general population. So the rest of the general population is not at the gym working out. So if you take 1,000 people off the street and you test them for max strength efforts, I think you'd be very surprised at how weak the average population is.
Oh yeah, and they've been able to live their lives pretty functionally still.
Yeah, for the most part, right? We do see as they get older, of course, the limited ranges of motion take place. The recurring injuries, the recurring spots take place that they're like, chronic issues that they're having. But then that awareness should be there to say, okay, maybe I should do something to fix this or change it.
Yeah. The other thing with training is, and I don't think a lot of people think about this, is, all right, you're getting stronger, maybe you're getting bigger muscles, all that. But is your training giving you more energy throughout the day? And do you have more strength to endure? That matters more than having maximal strength, in my opinion.
That's a good point.
Right? Would you rather have energy all day or be able to lift, 500 pounds once? And then
be wiped out the rest of the day.
Yeah, not feel that great the rest of the day.
Ultimately, when you step back from that, what did that do for you?
Yeah.
And so for some people, it can give them that emotional high, that satisfaction of accomplishing something, which is great. But then at the same time, like you said, physically, now you're just wiped out for the rest of the day, probably wiped out the next day too. So what did that really do for you in the long term?
Because that's not just going to affect you physically, right? That's going to affect you mentally in your other tasks.
Oh yeah, very much so. Because you're not going to be. We talk about people that are stressed out all day. Mentally, they're just not acutely in the program of what you're trying to accomplish. They're kind of wandering.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we don't want to have when people are training is a wandering mind. We want them to be focused on what it is that they're doing at that moment. We want them to be in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I've encountered that with people where they've just been too distracted.
Oh yeah.
And
it's a shitty training session.
Yeah.
Because you're spending most of the training session trying to get them integrated and involved, right? We're trying to get them engaged, and they're just
and sometimes these things that are happening outside their lives just take much more priority over the training. And, that's one of those times where you're like, hey, you want to just call it today, and just maybe go outside for a walk, because it's no longer going to be that beneficial for you.
Yeah. Because we're not going to get the results that we're looking for. And ultimately, if you're not engaged, especially when you're moving weights and moving loads, if you're not fully engaged in it and really locked in, the rate of injury is probably the percentage or the possibility of injury is probably going to greatly increase as a result of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've had those sessions with people where you can feel that early on. So then it's just maybe a little bit more talking. You take a little bit more time during sets and maybe focus more on the recovery, or maybe lighter intensity than you typically do. And then they end up feeling better after.
Yeah. Because they're fried. They're fried when they walked in.
Yeah.
And so on a scale of 1 to 10, they're already at a 10. You can't take them any higher than that. So the object there is to say, okay, let's down-regulate you. Let's bring you down a little bit.
Yeah. Thank them for their commitment,
Yeah.
And say, hey, I know you're going through a tough time or whatever, and I'm thankful that you're here. Appreciate that you keep working on your body and your mind. But today, let's just take it a little bit easier.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we've seen or heard from a lot of our guests is a lot more focus on breathing.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that we've seen a big trend in the last few years, is a better mindset of how breathing is going to help you train and how breathing is actually training.
Well, and I think, we forget that breathing is just so fundamental to living, right? So if you have poor breathing, you're not going to sleep well. You're going to be tired all day. But we don't really attribute all that stuff to breathing, right? People will go on, they'll go, okay, well, I need more caffeine. I need more of this. I need this stimulant. But they don't think about, maybe they'll think about more sleep, right? Yeah. They won't go back and go, oh, let me take a look at my breathing and assess my breathing. Where am I breathing? How am I breathing?
Because even as you're sleeping, if your quality of breathing is not good, your sleep's going to be horrible.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you're in bed for 9 hours, it's going to be horrible.
Yeah. Well, I bet the percentage of people with even mild sleep apnea is really high.
Yeah, probably. What's interesting, though, is getting clients to understand the importance of optimal or better breathing. And that in itself can be a big task, because when we breathe better, I mean, it really does help open up your quality of movement also, especially for people that are locked up in the upper regions and the shoulders. If you have limited range of motion and you have shoulder issues, learning how to breathe well makes a big difference in that.
And then along with nasal breathing, it's such a good way to self-regulate, especially for just doing let's say we're doing a 30-minute run or something like that, and we're breathing through our nose. It's a way to help us know, unless you're wearing a heart rate monitor, or if you don't have a heart rate monitor, it's a great way to know that you're not working yourself too hard.
And it's going to be something that's going to take a long time to get adjusted to, because a lot of people freak out, right? So don't be impatient when it comes to practicing nasal breathing. It's going to take a considerable amount of time. It takes patience. One of the easiest places that I figured that I practiced nasal breathing in was when I was driving. It's the best opportunity.
Yeah, and it probably calms you down from road rage too.
Oh, massively. So if that's a place where I would suggest you start, or if you're commuting or you're driving, just focus on breathing through the nose, in and out through the nose. Start there. You're just sitting there. There's not a lot of physical stress being put on you, so take advantage of that time. Breathing is core work, and kind of people don't think of that as core work. If you're not doing a sit-up or a crunch or a plank, then I'm not doing core work. But when you're learning how to re-engineer your breathing systems and you're using your diaphragm and you're breathing through the nose, then yes, you are doing core work, because you're getting those core tissues to actually do their function, which is to stabilize and control that relationship between the ribs and the pelvis.
Well, and I think from a mobility aspect, when we can get into these positions and figure out how to breathe in them and relax, it starts to unlock more positions and more awareness and more movement.
Yeah, because I think for me personally, when we started this whole stick mobility journey, was finding out what positions I wasn't comfortable in, discovering what positions I had trouble breathing in, and then saying, okay, I need to start improving these areas instead of just avoiding them or, holding my breath when I was in them.
Yeah. Well, because now if you were to go do jujitsu or even climbing, right, you're getting your body in awkward positions. And the best way to get yourself to relax is to breathe.
Yeah, it is. And it is funny how on the wall, your heart rate does get pretty high. There are a lot of moments where I have a better time. I have an easier time of it top roping than I do bouldering. Bouldering still, it's kind of one of those.
Yeah.
It's hard to let go on the wall. It really is, especially bouldering, because you're 15, 20 feet off the floor.
Man, I mean,
and if you make a mistake, you're going down.
Yeah.
You're going down.
You can hurt yourself pretty bad. I did.
Yeah, you're going down. I mean, the other day, Steve and I were out climbing. I mean, I was near the top and I went in to grab a hold and I had my hand the wrong position. And I went to pinch, grip that, and my hand just went pop, pop. And next thing I knew, boom, I was on my back on the floor. And so it was fun.
Yeah.
But in the mind, I just went, okay, I got to get there. I got to get that hold. I didn't have it and I fell. So and when you go through that, it's just your body, your brain's like, no, I prefer not to go through that.
Yeah. If you could have focused on your breathing at the time, it would have helped you slow down and go, okay, all right, maybe that's not the best option. Let me readjust my hand here.
Well, so it's interesting because at that point, you've been on the wall for, like you said, a little over a minute.
Yeah.
So you're hitting that point of relative fatigue, right? And so that's when it's really hard to sit there and go, okay, because you can't take a break. It's not like top roping where you can take a break. In top roping, you got the harness. If I get tired, okay, tension, okay, boom. Let me just sit and relax. And bouldering, you don't get that. No. You relax, you're on the floor.
Yep.
So it's a little different. So in that mindset is still there. Just get through this. Just get it done. And yeah, when that's by the time when you do get the top of a climb, especially if it's a difficult climb, it's always interesting to feel how high your heart rate is by the time you get down.
Oh yeah, I wore a heart rate monitor once, and I think I did it was one of the inverted boulder problems. The back, and it got up to like 175 or something.
I think to this day, climbing to me is really a great combination of strength, mobility, and cardiovascular training. I think you get all of it.
And you get the problem solving too.
Right? So you get so many different aspects all wrapped up into one neat little package.
Yeah.
To this day, I tell people, if you haven't done rock climbing, it really is one of the best things that you can do for yourself.
Well, I've always said, and people probably will hate me for saying this, but you can pretty much get rid of all your crawling if you just climb. Because crawling is pretty fundamental, right? We learned this as kids, and then eventually we stop. We start walking. But you start climbing as kids, and with climbing, there's much more complexity to it, right? And the route setters, or if you go outdoors, there's just constant problem solving. Whereas if you're crawling on the ground, I don't know how many options you have. I mean, unless you're breakdancing or doing something like that, then okay, that's different. But with climbing, I mean, you're essentially crawling on the wall.
Yeah, it's vertical crawl pattern.
Yeah,
right.
And that transfers over. So, I didn't crawl for a long time after I started climbing, and then I went to the ground. I'm like, well, I have push-up strength. I have pushing strength. I can run. I can sprint up a hill. So if I just try to go in a crawl, this is easy. This isn't bad. I could learn any pattern because I've already developed all this climbing wall. So you can pretty much kill. I mean, maybe people don't have access to the climbing wall, but
very true.
And so that's fine. But I would say that if you do have access to a climbing wall or something to climb, you can get rid of crawling.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Some of the things that people would want to focus on if they get into climbing is to also offset that with your pushing and pressing motions, because you don't get a lot of that in climbing, because climbing is predominantly pulling. So you do want to make sure that you do offset that with some pushing drills and some pressing drills, some overhead pressing, because you should have pretty good range of motion, especially when you get into rock climbing. Bringing that arm all the way up, focusing on your breathing, you'll get pretty good overhead shoulder mobility. So offset that. Like I said, you're always pulling towards your center mass when you're climbing. We also want to then offset that with pushing away from your center mass with the pressing and pushing drills. Yeah.
So if you want to offset climbing and you want to do it with crawling, that works too.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do too. Or if you have access to a gym that has climbing and a gym, then once you get done climbing, just go over, do a couple pushing drills, do a couple pressing drills, and I think you'll be pretty good actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really see too many obese people doing rock climbing.
No, it's pretty self-limiting, man. Yeah. I mean, you can get good to a certain point, but then that strength to body weight ratio it takes over.
Oh yeah, very true, very true. I mean, it is good to see. I mean, I've been seeing some heavier people actually out climbing a little bit more, and good for them.
Yeah,
I mean,
isn't there's a lineman in the NFL?
That's Schweitzer.
That's using it for cross training.
Yeah, cross training. Plays for the Washington football team. He introduced that to himself. He started involving that, I think, just this past off season. But he really enjoys it. There's another account I follow on Instagram. Big fella. He's easily over 300. But to see him on the wall is great. And he does some pretty solid climbs too, especially for a big guy like that. So I know grip strength wise, much more demand carrying that much mass.
Oh yeah, you'd probably rip your arm off if you shook his hand.
Right? Yeah. Because Steve and I talk about it, our dimensions. Steve and I are both a little bit shorter, stockier. Could we be better climbers if we lost some mass? Of course. But at the same time, we like having the mass though too. So it's kind of one of those things of I'm mobile enough where I'm above average.
Yeah.
But no one's gonna ever say, "Holy shit!" Like you're like mobility master as far as ranges of motion. But at the same time, I understand the price of keep maintaining mass is that'll never happen.
Yeah.
right? And I'm good with it. Like that's, and you've heard us say this before on the podcast. Whatever decisions you make, you have to understand the pros and the cons with those choices, and you have to be good with those pros and those cons. So if you're at peace with that, then great, then continue to do it. If not, if you're restless about it and you're fighting about those pros and the cons, then you got to figure out a way, something different, or find a way to get over them.
Well, I think if you're like us, right, we like to do a bunch of different activities. We're not just specialists.
Yeah.
So if you have that mindset, or you do like these different activities, your training has to be well-rounded, but you also have to accept the fact that, look, you need to keep some tension to be good, to be decent at these certain sports, or else you're going to increase the risk of injury.
No.
Right. So you're not going to be able to, you can't train all the qualities or every quality you want at the highest level at the same time.
Yeah, no.
That's the main point there. You've got to pick and choose, like, okay, this is going to benefit me right now, so I'm going to work on this, but that's going to take some energy and your resources. So you can't go 100% in every single phase of training.
Yeah, very true. Because I know people have asked me, do you climb outside? And I'm like, no, I don't do that. And honestly, I don't know if I ever will, because I'm comfortable enough indoors. Like, to me, that's like,
yeah,
because I use it more as a supplement more than I do a main objective, right? So for me, it's not a main priority for climbing. It's more, something I do 2, maybe 3 times a week. And that's more for the mental aspect, trying to solve puzzles, physical aspect of making sure it helps me keep somewhat mobile, or a little bit mobile than the average person. And it's a great way to really not have to spend so much time in the gym doing pull-ups and
you get really strong at these weird angles.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go climbing one day outside, not bouldering, because bouldering outside is really hard. People will get up to climbing maybe V3, V4 in the gym and go, I want to go outside. Take them outside and they're like, I can barely do this V0.
Yeah, I can barely hold on to the rock.
I can barely do anything. Or the footholds, they're not there for you to see. You have to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah.
So at first you're spending a lot more time hanging on and then figuring out where the feet are. So the technique it's similar, but it's much more nuanced outside.
Because it's not labeled for you.
No, it's not labeled.
It's not color coded. It's not labeled.
The harder the climb, you'll see more chalk marks in certain areas. Yeah. That's the only way up.
Yeah.
But the easier ones, it's like, here's point A, here's point B. Just get there however you can. But it's much different outside. You would enjoy the ropes more.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if I did outside, rope climbing, of course, would be the only thing I would think I would start with.
Yeah,
that would feel comfortable.
For me, that's more fun outside than bouldering.
And yeah,
getting on the ropes.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. If we ever look at non-exercise, so to speak, forms of training, I think one of the things that would benefit people a lot is just dancing.
Oh man, that's huge. I wish I wish I did it as a kid more.
Dance?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think dance, because of the rhythm in it, I think it applies to just about every activity you do.
All right.
You're building connective tissues, you're getting springiness, the timing. I mean, there's so much good things in dance.
Yeah. And you see so many people that just don't dance.
Yeah.
Is it because they lack that coordination, or they lack rhythm, so to speak?
Yeah.
But you're like, if you watch people dance, you're like, oh, you're getting everything that you possibly need.
Just about, yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, other than just resistance training, so to speak.
Yeah, but you can get that too if you get good enough to do like partner dancing.
Oh, very much, yeah. Partner dancing, swing dancing, those types of dancing, yeah, very much so. Even ballroom dancing.
Yeah.
It incorporates that where you're lifting your partner up. So yeah, you'll definitely learn how to move with load.
There was this what's his name? I need to ask Chris. He was a really good boxer, but he grew up doing Ukrainian dance as his conditioning. Like his dad, so he was a good boxer young, and his dad pulled him out and said, "You're gonna have to do this for the next few years."
Oh, interesting.
And it's this Ukrainian dance, and then Chris showed me a video. I mean, the stuff they do is insane, man. I'll have to post
yeah. The Ukrainian style dancing is great. Yeah,
I mean,
it's
the level changing, the plyometrics, everything, the dexterity. It's amazing, man.
Yeah.
So now I guess, his footwork in boxing is phenomenal.
Yeah, I can see where that would transfer over.
And then you get the rhythm, everything.
Yeah. It's one of the primal things that we have that really allows us to get all the things plyometrically, movement-wise, working active ranges of motion, active mobility, usable ranges of motion that we have.
Well, I think it's part of a lot of cultures too, right? It's a traditional thing that they do at big events.
At big events, yeah. But we just don't see it a lot.
And not even big events, just gatherings. People they dance.
They dance, right?
That's just the thing. But we don't really do that here as much.
Yeah, we don't see that, huh? Even at weddings. Like at a wedding, you'll see like 100 people at a wedding. 30, 40 people out on the dance floor. The rest are just sitting there watching. It's kind of like, is it because there's so many factors built into that, but it's one of those things where minus the age, but even older people, you see older people out there dancing and people that have been doing it for a long period of time, they continue to do it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where if 100 people are at a wedding, and you would kind of expect at least a good 50 to 60 of them to be out on the dance floor at any given time.
Yeah, it's almost like a social anxiety type.
Yeah, so there's a lot of other aspects to it, other than just the physical.
Yeah.
But from a physical standpoint, just getting out there and doing something as simple as dancing is extremely beneficial for you.
Well, when you hear a beat, it's pretty natural to just start moving your body, right? Like I see it with my kids.
Yeah. You put music on for kids and they just get into it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like start grooving.
Logan's 15 months old, Neal. He'll just start bouncing. Yeah. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. And so it's from a society standpoint, society changes us as we get older. Either gravitating more towards dance or gravitating away from dance.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think it's more gravitating away from dance.
Where we should really encourage it.
Yeah.
Because it's also that form of self-expression.
Right.
And being able to let go. So just go do it.
Go do it. From a social standpoint, I think a lot of people I don't want to embarrass myself out on the dance floor. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, no one really cares.
No one cares.
Yeah.
Nowadays you may become a GIF or a meme. I mean, that could happen. But then you'd have popularity on a whole different scale. So there's a whole different benefit. You could end up being, hey, that's me. I'm a viral GIF, right? Well, thank you again for joining us today's podcast. It's just Neal and I just rambling on about everyday stuff, things that we've been seeing, things that we've been looking at. So until then, be good to each other. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and whatever platform you're on, either Apple, iTunes, or Spotify, please, if you could leave a review, we'd appreciate that. If you have any questions that we can answer for you, be sure to leave those in the comments also.
If you're looking for more information on our education, our products, please go to www.stickmobility.com.
And also hit that subscribe button to that YouTube channel, and don't forget our live Instagram classes 3 times a week. If you want to join in, grab your sticks and hit that 45-minute class.